Shalom, 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 baruchim habaim. Welcome to Awakening, Torah Mussar Mindfulness, our weekly public offering on the Torah portion. I am Rabbi Chasya Oriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Kehilat Mussar Mindfulness. I'm delighted that you decided to join us, whether you're joining us on Zoom, at our YouTube channel, please subscribe, or on any of the social media networks, essentially Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. We are live streaming right now, live from the Galil in Israel, Haaretz, on Monday, October 7th, a year since the genocide of October 7th. It is now 3:22 in the morning here. I welcome all of you on this very mournful, trying day. The whole year has been this way. So we enter where we are going next in this cycle of learning the Torah from our ancestors and from God, and from these amazing two traditions of Mussar and mindfulness. Mussar from the Jewish tradition, mindfulness coming out of Theravada Buddhism, where we seek to learn from these ancestral and ancient wisdoms of what we can get from the Torah portion in order to know how to cope and survive and eventually thrive, B'ezrat Hashem, again. This whole year has been dedicated to all of us after the genocide of October 7th. So we're now come full circle, a full year, where we are now entering Parashat Re'eh in the book of Deuteronomy and Devarim. We have obviously a few more parshiot to get through so that we can complete this year's cycle together. So welcome. Thank you for jumping into this about an hour together where we'll learn together. We'll engage in actual practice of mindfulness meditation in order to internalize the message of this week's Torah portion, which isn't this week. It's from a previous week, of course. So let's jump in together. We always begin with our kavanot, our intentions for today's session. So let me start with what we can do together. It's always the same three intentions, three kavanot. If you know us, you know what they are. The first, if you are watching and have vision, you can see now that I'm sharing screen, if you're watching by video, that we're doing this time together, what I call awakening Torah Mussar Mindfulness. We're doing it as an act of radical self-care, of self-compassion. We're doing this to strengthen our own souls, Kedeshe, in order to be of benefit to others in the future. And then we're also doing this on behalf of others, this practice, this path, this way of life, so we can strengthen our relationship to others, so that we can be a better conduit of God's good to others when they need us. And the same goes with our relationship with the divine. However we define the divine or that relationship, it's something we're doing to strengthen that relationship. It is a relationship and it does require strengthening. It requires active cultivation, not just something that just happens automatically, right? As grace. So we do this so we can be a better conduit of God's good when others need us. So may we merit these three kavanot, these three intentions in today's session. I'm going to stop sharing screen. If you are watching, if you're listening through audio, through podcast, then I'm moving on to what we're going to cover today. So Re'eh actually happened over a month ago, back in August 31st, 2024. It was in Kaf Zayin of the Hebrew month of Av, Tafshin Pei Dalet, so the previous Jewish year and the previous month, actually 2 months. hold on. Just logistically, if I hear the siren, I have to enter the safe room, and I just heard a missile being intercepted by the Iron Dome at 3:26 in the morning. So it must be hitting a neighboring town and not here. Obviously very frightening to encounter any of this. Yes, so I will continue for now, and we will see if I need to pause for 10 minutes. So we're not even in the month of Elul, we're in the month of Tishrei. We've just celebrated Rosh Hashanah, so Shana Tova, Metuka. Now we say Gamar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed in the book of life, because we are in the 10 days of repentance between Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, and Yom HaKippurim, the Day of Atonement. So this is quite a while ago, and we have to catch up through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more parshiot before we can conclude the year. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for learning and sticking with us all year, and in order to really strengthen us as a community and as a path. Yeah, and really looking forward to your feedback and how this supported you during this whole year of coping with and surviving the genocide of October 7th and the ongoing kidnapping and holding of our hostages, the ongoing wars on all borders with Iran and its proxies. And it essentially is much larger than a regional war. No one wants to say this out loud, but it is a world war, and we do our best to strengthen each other and get through this one day at a time. So what happens in Re'eh that we are going to explore together? So as you know, during the whole book of Deuteronomy and Devarim, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is giving his final teachings and speech before he is to pass away. And this is really to impart this new generation who was obviously 20 and under, who were able to survive in the Midbar, in the wilderness, to be able to enter the land of Canaan, which will become Eretz Israel. So he needs to pass on what the ancestors want to teach, right? And the laws that God, Hashem, wants us to know. So when our ancestors actually eventually enter Eretz Israel, Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, our ancestors, are instructed to go to 2 mountains to announce blessings and curses from God. The blessings will be on Har Gerizim, and the curses will be on Har Eval. And the theme of this parsha is that God will choose a central place of worship. Korbanot, sacrifices, which will be the kind of organizing principle of not only the Mishkan, but eventually the temple, the Beit Mikdash, it must be offered only in this centralized location that God will choose. And so the korbanot for the 3 pilgrimage festivals of Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, which translates as the Festival of Weeks, harvest festival, essentially. I mean, they're all harvest in a lot of ways. And then Sukkot, the Festival of Booths, and of course of Shabbat, must be brought to this centralized location and coming together there so that it will be a joyous occasion for everyone who travels and comes to that location. This will end up being the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. Farmers would bring and eat 1/10 of all their produce there. And then Moshe tells the children of Israel that they are God's children, and that they should follow the mitzvot, the commandments. Animals can still be slaughtered for food outside of the centralized location. They need to chew their cud and have split hooves. Fish need to have fins and scales. And we are commanded not to eat any of the birds that the Torah lists as not kosher, as not kasher. And the last thing is that we are not to consume blood at all in any form. So the final teachings are that we must be very careful of false prophets and others who attempt us to worship idols. And Shemitah, the year of release, happens every 7 years. Loans are forgiven at this time. And finally, one of the central teachings, which everything that comes before it matters for a reason, which we'll talk about, is that we are actually to look out for people in need and be generous with them with giving tzedakah, often translated as charity, meaning righteousness. So this is central. It's not that you are just supposed to, when someone in need comes to you and asks for help or need, that you give then. You are actually supposed to seek out the person in need, look for them. Have that be a part of your daily observance, of your awareness, of your mindfulness practice, that you are supposed to be out looking for people in need. And this could be obviously much larger than just financial needs. So many of us, especially since the genocide of October 7th, are in need for people to listen to us, need for hugs, need for just connection. Sometimes it's food, sometimes we're not feeling well or strong enough. So all these things matter and add up, and we should be paying attention to them. So holding that in mind, okay? So that is a summary of our Torah portion. Now, as you know, the pattern is that I focus on what I feel like we really need to get this year. What is the message that's going to strengthen us on this path of Mussar mindfulness? So, as I said, we are given a ritualized ceremony of blessings and curses. And we're given the laws at Moav. And this is the core of Devarim, of Deuteronomy. And it's the lengthiest section. So obviously we've covered the regulations of the place of worship, that we are to obey the laws. And some key things all kind of go together. One is that we are to destroy completely, utterly, all the Canaanite places of worship. The second is that we are to have that centralized one place for sacrificial offer. And then the third is that outside of the centralized location, one can have non-sacrificial food, slaughtering essentially, okay? So what comes together from these laws, and one is very central, that we're not supposed to live like or model ourselves after or mimic how the Canaanites live. And one of the key ways is how they move into mourning when they have a death. They apparently gash their skin and cause themselves to bleed. There would be other practices too that went along with that in the same vein. And we are specifically told never to do that to our bodies, even in our worst pain, even when we feel completely alone, even when we feel completely violated, humiliated at our worst. We are not to gash our skin. We are not to hurt or destroy our bodies, which are essentially our temples for our souls, which essentially in some way is on loan to us from Hashem, from the Almighty. So this is one of the key areas. And the key teaching actually that comes from, which I love, is Abravanel, wonderful Torah rabbinic commentator. I believe he's coming out of the 15th century Spain, but I could be wrong. We can look that up. He says the teaching is coming to remind us that we are never truly orphaned. Even if we've lost our parents, lost our spouses, our children, those closest to us, that we should never perform extreme rites of mourning, because we always have our relationship with God. We're always God's child. And this is meant to strengthen us at our utter weakness. And for any of you who are surviving the genocide of October 7th, the being a refuge from the North, any of this, the hatred, the terrorism, this is such a core teaching to really concentrate on and begin to internalize that you are never alone, you are never completely orphaned, that you are a child of God, that you are loved, you are part of a greater people who also hold you as family. And so it comes down to us as teachings of mourning in a way that will be particularly Jewish and not at all like any other people of the ancient Near East, particularly the Canaanites. The other is our diet, what we eat, how we slaughter, where we slaughter, what we allow to go into our temple in order to strengthen our souls in service of God and others. These two paths will be the defining moment, at least in this Torah portion, if not Bigadol for all the Torah, of Kedusha, of holiness, what it means to be holy. When we say in Leviticus, early in Vayikra, Kedushim Tehiyu, that you shall be holy because I, the Lord, am holy. These are the two key ways that Moshe, our teacher, reminds us in this Torah portion of Re'eh. You do this through how you mourn. You do this through what you eat, what you put in to create sustenance and nourish you in this cultivation and in this path. So one of the key teachings that come out of the diet of Kedusha, of holiness in this path, we say the path of Mussar mindfulness is on the path toward holiness, is that we are limiting our diet. Not every animal is available to us. We only consume certain animals. And what's at teaching, the teaching behind it is that limiting our diet is fundamental to a proper way of life. I will say that again. Limiting our diet is fundamental to a proper way of life. And if you still haven't gotten it, I will clearly lay it out for you that we may not satisfy every desire that we have as a human being. There are things, the ultimate lesson, there are things prohibited to us and there are things permitted to us. This is a fundamental lesson for humanity, let alone to the Jews. And it's not as if they have to limit themselves to the same animals that we do, but that every human being needs to not satisfy every desire of theirs. They need to grow up with a real clear sense of morality, an internal moral compass that says things are prohibited to me and things are permitted. This is how we have healthy functioning of the planet and in relationship with one another, and also in relationship with the animals that we're actually consuming, so that we're not over consuming, so we're not causing unnecessary harm and suffering. This is so fundamental to Kedusha, to holiness, to a real proper way of life, okay, that is wise, appropriate, just so central to the path. So I will share that the effects, obviously, on us Jews over centuries, right? It goes even beyond the purpose stated in the Torah, and through the lesson of really living out these laws, and in a real embodied sense, has really shown us, and we are an ancient people, so now these are been lived out for 3,000-4,000 years, that there's an additional purpose, right? And it obviously curbs our freedom of action, and it's really an expression of submission to God's authority. It's a submission, and even if you don't believe in God and have a relationship with God, it's submitting to a higher purpose and to a healthy balance of the planet. It's such a submitting to a higher wisdom. And since our laws of how we eat and what we allow ourselves to consume and what we cannot consume, they limit the right to take animal life and the method by which it is taken. And it really is understood as an expression of reverence for life and compassion for animals. And I would even argue compassion for ourselves, of what we decide to put into our body to nourish us, to be able to be as strong and healthy as possible in service of God and others. So this all ends up having an effect on us over time, right? And so this is really understood. Our diet, our regimen is really one, it teaches self-discipline, self-compassion, compassion for animals and others. And it is essentially a force, a very powerful force for Jewish distinctiveness and unity. And it's beautiful. And we've really learned that. So even if we start from the principle in the Torah that we follow these laws because God commanded them, we have learned through the actual lived embodied experience of following the laws of kashrut, the dietary laws over thousands of years, that this is essentially the effect on us as individuals and us as a collective. And it's phenomenal. Obviously, there are peoples who are not Jews who even follow us, right? Who decide to eat kosher, who decide that they're going to eat something modified like it, because they understand the root of the Kedusha, of the holiness, to limit the human being. And so there's a reason why kasher, right? Kosher means fit, proper. That which is wise and appropriate. Very important. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to really emphasize, that when we have really developed this discipline and regimen and a way of life and being, of limiting ourselves, not allowing us to do what we want, when we want, whenever we want, including how we mourn and what we do to this body, to this temple, this daily behavior embodied, how we eat, how we mourn, in addition to all the other things, leads to what comes at the end of this Torah portion, which is there are very distinct measures to protect the poor, to protect those most vulnerable in our society. This comes in chapter 15, verses 1 through 18. If you're following along in Deuteronomy and Devarim and Parshat Re'eh. And I will say that the concern in the Torah, at least here in this Torah portion, is to alleviate the suffering of the poor. And in particular, the extreme difficulties that can befall the poor, befall those who are most vulnerable in society. The first is the inability to pay off debts. The second is the inability to obtain loans when they need them. And the indentured servitude, that they would never be able to get out of that state. And so we have in the Torah a whole system set up in order to release the poor from any of these extreme difficulties that might befall them. That essentially every 7 years we have to remit the debt that is owed to us if we did loan to the poor. That there's an exhortation to refuse loans to the poor. Like there's some people who, because of the Shemitah year and the release, might not give loans to the poor because they feel that they're not going to get anything back. That there's an exhortation that you're not allowed to refuse loans. And the third is there's a limit on how long one can be an indentured servant. Now, you might be thinking, well, these are ancient laws for ancient societies. What does that have to do with us today? Well, if you know and practice, obviously within Judaism, and even follow, if say you follow the Noahide laws, or just as someone who's an ally and supports the Jewish people and their way of life, really seeking out, as I mentioned earlier, that we are to be on the lookout for people who are in need today, and that there's obligatory giving that we all must give up to a certain percentage, even if we're poor. And then there's obviously nedivut, a form of generosity and giving that is from just an open heart. We give both, right, essentially. And there's all these provisions of not taking interest, especially among our own people, and other things to protect people who live out financial transactions today. One thing I'll tell you in particular is that I've always very much valued and felt was really much in alignment with my practice of living out Kedusha, of holiness. And I learned this from not giving myself everything that I need, and or not even need. Maybe it is a little bit need, but not everything I wanted in life. Okay, you learn that through the laws of kashrut, that you're not allowed to eat everything that you want whenever you want. And so I hire a gardener to help me in the garden, in the yard here. And he is an Arab Druze man, lovely man named Rawad, who always says to me, he does part of the job and then he'll want to come back later. And I say, I'm going to pay you now for the labor that you've done, and then I'll pay you the rest for whatever he's done. And he always says, no, you can just pay me later. But there's a principle in the Torah that you never allow someone to leave their labor without being paid at the end of the day. And one of the metaphors is you don't take their shirt off of their back and not give it back to them by the end of the day. So I always insist to Rawad that he accept payments right then and right there, because I want him to leave with what he needs at the end of that day. And because I know what it feels like to deny myself. And I don't want him to have to go through that form of denial when especially it's not his choosing, right? If I choose not to pay him, even if he's saying that he's agreeing to it, he might need that money for his family or to procure some food, or maybe his car, he forgot that he needs gasoline or something. Things come up that you realize, oh, I really did need that cash from the work that I did today. And so this is just one small example of how we can protect one another. That should always be in our hearts and minds, and that these practices laid out for us really matter. Now, you might be thinking, well, how does that help us? How does that help us kind of cope with the genocide of October 7th and the ongoing wars? Well, first of all, you should know, if you're not already observing, that you're part of an amazing ancient tradition passed on to us that really is not only concerned with holiness, Kedusha, but has laid out practices and a path in order to experience it in a really embodied way. What you deny yourself from doing when you are in your most difficult state of mourning, that you always keep in mind, I'm still a child of God. I am full of dignity. I'm created in the image and likeness of the divine. And what I put into my body and how I treat the animal, all that matters. Okay, it has a whole effect on the planet. And that's really profound, to see it as a lifelong path that one realizes affecting how they see the world and how they end up seeing and treating others. And this is so important when it comes down to seeking the poor and those in need. And when I mean poor here, I can mean any of us could be poor right now, especially emotionally. It's so painful and difficult right now in so many ways. We are strengthening one another and our resilience, that is a need. And so always being on the lookout. So can I give you strength, if you don't already practice and observe these laws, that you attempt to take them on. I encourage you to realize that there is something very important there that's going to affect how you relate to your own body, how you relate to animals, how you relate to others. So in closing, before we move into our mindfulness meditation, I want to bring a text about from the text in Devarim, chapter 15, verse 7. It says, if there is among you any needy person, one of your brethren within any of your gates, in your land, in which the Almighty, our God, gives you, you shall not harden your hearts, nor shut your hands against your needy brother or sister. And Ibn Ezra, another wonderful rabbinic commentator, both Abravanel and Ibn Ezra are both coming out of Spain, 15th century about. He explains that the words, you shall not harden your heart, actually mean you should refrain. Again, here's this self-restraint, that to realize you can't do and say whatever you want whenever you want, because you're submitting to a higher authority, right? That you shall not refrain from speaking kind words to his heart. Now, this is an amazing twist. Look at this. You shall not harden your heart. Would you have thought that meant, you might think, okay, if I'm not to harden my heart, that means I might close my fist and not give him what he needs. But this is actually acknowledging that you're going to, because you are this amazing soul created in the image and likeness of the divine, that you're going to have a kind words in your heart for this person. And you, in closing down your heart, hardening heart, will stop yourself from giving him those kind words. This is very profound. I've witnessed this actually all year. Our amazing brothers and sisters, our brethren, not refrain from this, despite the genocide of October 7th, where so many people, in particularly certain cultures abroad, would feel very fearful that they'll say the wrong thing or give the wrong message. So they won't say anything. They'll stop themselves, they'll refrain themselves from speaking the kind words. But in Israel here, we've really strengthened one another. We've taken the risk. We realize that we all are in so much need. So we come up to one another, and it's very intimate. I like at Rosh Hashanah, when I was at the tefillah at the services, people came up to me very close and intimate. Said, really, how are you? How are you surviving this? What's going on with you? And then really listening and saying, me too, and having that connection. And are you caring for yourself? Do you have somewhere to go? Do you have help? Do you have resources? That really speaking of kind words, where I really felt seen and I saw them. And so even Ezra is really saying here that when a person is poor, whether it's poor in emotions, poor financially, poor mentally, culturally, whatever you might think of poor, poverty, right? That person suffers more than just financial deprivation or any other of the deprivations, right? He or she can easily suffer from emotional pain. And so they might become totally discouraged and broken. A lot of people have headed down that path, right? And therefore, we have an obligation to open our hearts to anyone we see who is needy, who is in that moment, right? And to talk to that person with compassion, with rachamim, and an empathetic manner. Okay? We must go out of our way to connect and give that person words of encouragement. This is huge. Okay? So even Ezra is really teaching us the guide here of how we must continue forward, especially today when we're having all these amazing ceremonies in Israel and across the world to honor the victims of the genocide of October 7th, the survivors and their families, the families waiting for the 101 hostages still to be released, making Hamas release them. You know, everyone says, bring them home. I would prefer to say, send them home, demand worldwide, cause Hamas to have to release them, right? Release them now, maybe the better term. That we have to really, really be gentle today and in general, of just how painful and fragile a lot of us can feel. And it's not just because of what happened a year ago or even has been going on for the whole year. It's because if you're awake and alert, you're aware that there's a whole set of people who want to cause us harm and suffering still, who are organizing in different countries to hurt us and not listen to us, not open their hearts with compassion and empathetic words, that they want to cause harm and suffering. Whether they are funded by Qatar or any other organization, or have just caught up in delusion. We talk about greed, hatred, and delusion. We see this happening where so many people are lost and caught up in the fever, right? The fervor of the moment, and not being able to see clearly, and really have turned and closed their hearts. So it's a big task that we follow Ibn Ezra, our teacher today, And really keep in mind, how can I care for? Right? How can I search out the needy? So with that, I invite you into your posture. There are stereotypically, I guess you want to say, it's part of the practice of mindfulness meditation, 4 classic postures. You can assume one of them, but whatever works for you. You can walk back and forth, not going anywhere in particular. You could stand kind of in a strong mountain pose and just breathe, paying attention to your breath. You can lie down. I invite you to keep your eyes open if you have vision, so you remain awake and alert. And if you're like me, you're going to either be sitting on a zafu, a meditation cushion, or you can be at the edge of your seat so that you are upright, right? A real dignified, upright position. One that you feel dignity, created in the image and likeness of the divine, really on this path of Kedusha towards holiness. And I always say ground your feet so that you feel held by Mother Earth. If any of you right now come from any traumatic backgrounds, whether you're a survivor of October 7th or the ongoing wars, anyone feeling trauma, that's acute especially, look around the room right now before we begin the meditation. Know that you are safe right in this instant, and that you're joining in this global meditation together through the guidance of my voice, that you're safe. At any point that you feel that you're not safe, you start to feel shaky, feel that you can't handle this, open your eyes if they were closed. Find yourself again rooted in this room. Okay? You can always stop the meditation if it feels too much. The rest of us who aren't in a kind of acute traumatic reactivity right now, I invite you to close your eyes if you feel safe and comfortable. If you prefer to keep them open, just lower your gaze. So we're going to begin. I want you to bring your full awareness to your body, the gift, this temple that God, Hashem, has given you. And I want you to feel from the bottom of your toes, bringing your loving awareness through your feet, all the way up your legs, into your hips, the sit bones, feeling very heavy and grounded in the sit bones if you are seated, up through your torso, the back, into your shoulder blades and your shoulders, really sensing that you are held and carried in this body. Down the arms, up into your neck, up into the jaw, releasing the jaw, letting it relax, inviting ease into the cheeks, ease and softness around the eyes, forehead and scalp. Really inviting yourself fully here as you would a best friend. Heart, body, soul, spirits. And we'll begin with one deep inhalation. Inhale and exhale. I don't know if you're like me, but on the exhale, my shoulders and shoulder blades just fall and relax. It's a beautiful thing. Try to see on this next inhalation if you can have the exhale be longer, which really will calm your parasympathetic part of your body, that the whole system that really does calm you and helps with this de-stressing even long term. So inhalation, and then taking your time on the exhale. So an example of this would be inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, see if you can do 6 or 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, beautiful. Continuing to do that. And then when you're ready, you will allow your breath to just fall to its own natural rhythm. There's no need to control it. Mindfulness meditation, it's not about controlling the breath. It's about bringing your full loving attention to what is before you, whatever arises in this moment. So consciously establishing our posture with embodied intentionality, intentionality. I can't say the words. I cannot, with imkavana, okay? Wakeful, soft, alert, balanced. Bringing awareness of the body into the forefront of your attention. Looking at yourself with kindness, with curiosity of whatever is arising. Often strong emotions can be associated with the sensations in the body. And then we can notice a narrative, a story start to emerge in our mind in response to the stimuli, the conditions of the body arising, right? And the emotions associated with it. So for instance, I might have, I guess I want to describe it as a broken heart, real feeling of a broken heart, just a deep, heavy sadness in the chest area. And the emotion associated, there are several, right? Is deep sadness, powerlessness, and sometimes anger or rage. And then immediately I could begin to tell a story, a narrative, or play a movie about the experience of a broken heart, right? The feeling of it. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to notice the urge to do that. But I don't have to respond. I don't have to create a story around it. So letting the passing thoughts, the passing sounds, just sit quietly in the background of your attention. No need to push away, not get lost in them either. Just foregrounding the simple awareness of the body at this moment. A simple and clear knowing of the body just as it is right here and right now in this moment. The body sitting, the body sensing, the body feeling, the body listening, the body breathing. Breathing in with mindfulness, breathing out with mindfulness. Cultivating an affectionate curiosity. Sensing the places in the body where there is ease, where there is wellness, and appreciating those parts, those areas of the body. Now bringing your loving attention to sensing the parts of the body that are struggling. Might be distressed or painful. And being able to ask, what does this need just now? A greater sense of kindness, befriending, a sense of compassion, a greater sense of equanimity, perhaps. Being able to establish those intentions. Being mindful of what is happening in your mind, heart at this moment. What is the shape, the climate of the mind heart just now? Is there spaciousness? Is there calmness? Being able to appreciate the gladness of any of this, that you are alive, that you're able to be here with this practice and teaching. Sometimes the mind heart may feel contracted, anxious, restless, or dull. If that is the case for you, simply acknowledging it and asking, what does this need? What would be helpful? What would be healing right here and right now in this moment? What mida, soul trait, might need a sense of balance cultivation? Perhaps it's menochat nefesh, a calmness, a centeredness of the soul, what we call equanimity, to define ourselves by our hearts, the ability to care, and not by the contents of our minds. Spanning your field awareness now to acknowledge the life that you are living right here and right now, with its joys and sorrows. How are we inhabiting this life? With the intentions of ill will, anxiety, harshness, confusion, or with the intention of kindness, compassion, and non-clinging? Have you been involved in a lot of wishful thinking lately instead of seeing things clearly? Have you moved into denial because it's just too painful to hear and see the rhetoric and violence of those who want to cause us harm? To know what is helpful and what is not helpful, this is part of our path. This is part of Kedusha, of holiness. To know what leads to distress and what leads to the end of distress. Sensing the possibility of being able to make those choices, to inhabit this life with kindness, with gladness, with compassion, with equanimity. And this is where we expand our Kedusha, our holiness in this practice, expanding our field of awareness beyond the boundaries of our personal world. We share life with many. The joys and sorrows, the conflicts, the places and the times of war and times of peace. Cultivating the intentions that heal. Refuah shlema. The intentions that liberate. The intentions that bring distress to an end. Again, covenant intentions of loving kindness, of chesed, of metta, of rachamim, of compassion. Of non-clinging, of not wanting things to be different than what they are, essentially not accepting. Can we cultivate this together now as ways of meeting the world, ways of meeting the events and experiences we cannot control, ways of meeting change that is not welcome. Here too, we cultivate together balance, menochata nefesh, this centered soul, compassion, care, the pathways of healing. Today, on October 7th, a year, 365 days later, we commit together. We dedicate our lives to cultivating these intentions and this path together. We will enter a minute of silence, and I will ring the bell to pull us out of the meditation. If it is your practice to bow, I encourage you to do so to Hashem, to God, to the Almighty, to our ancestors who brought us these teachings of Mussar and mindfulness. Even giving a bow to your own practice that you have invested in radical self-care and self-compassion to make this a better world. Bowing to anyone who is a spiritual friend, who a chavruta, avad, sangha, who strengthens you on this path. Bowing to our teachers who brought us to this moment, to these teachings. I think of Abravanel and Ibn Ezra and Moshe Rabbeinu, who brought us these teachings and moments. So thank you for joining today on the anniversary of the worst genocide to the Jewish people since the Shoah, since the Holocaust, and surviving this ongoing war with Iran and its proxies. May you continue to be on this path with us here at the Institute of Holiness to strengthen yourself and really to strengthen, with the help of our allies, this fortitude, this ability to respond appropriately and wisely to this ongoing war that is essentially a battle for civilization. So sending love, wishing you all Shana Tova, a happy new year, and Gemar Chatima Tova, a real sealing of all of us for the good, that we love and care for each other, sealed in the book of life. So it's coming up on Yom HaKippurim, a day of atonement at the end of the week. I hold you all in mind. You'll join us for the next Torah portion, B'ezrat Hashem, God willing, which is going to be Shoftim. And may we continue to receive strength from the Almighty and each other to continue this teaching. Thank you to all of you who've offered donations to strengthen the Institute for Holiness, joining our membership, which is simply $18 per month, and for Israelis, 18 shekels per month, where we strengthen this amazing Institute for Holiness to be able to continue to offer this public offering and to run all of our Mussar mindfulness groups to train so many people and strengthen each other on this path. It's quite a blessing and amazing. So thank you to all of you. Do join our newsletter and subscribe at kehilatmussar.com. Again, we always receive sponsorships for these weekly offerings, so please give in honor of somebody or in loving memory. This week, of course, is in loving memory of all those who have perished since October 7th, all the way even until today. We just had a terror attack earlier today. May their memories be for a blessing. So with that, signing off. Take care of yourselves. We will connect soon.